Hello, boss.
Hello, Bella. What are you doing?
Cooking nasi goreng, boss.
Kok cooking at 2 a.m.?
No, I was sleeping lah, boss.
It's okay. I just need you to answer the audit queries and send it to me ASAP. Ngerti?
Okay, boss, tomorrow. Hey, yo, it's 9 a.m. already. Okay, I need to settle these audit queries before boss yells at me.
So the first issue is that the auditor has doubts over the going concern of the company due to these 4 indications, which are negative working capital, default in borrowing obligations, the cessation of operations, and retrenchment of employees. I think I need to look back to what going concern means. Going concern is a concept where the entity is viewed as continuing in business for the foreseeable future. So I just need to prove that BesiCo can continue its business for the next 12 months after the end of 2016. Dear auditors, in response to the audit queries previously provided by you, our justifications are as below. We believe that our going concern still remains. This is because, firstly, due to the positive 2017 steel industry outlook that enables local market price of steel products to be rebounded, the decline in China's steel dumping, and the increase in infrastructure products such as MRT and LRT will improve the demand of steel products. Besides, the restraint order against creditor is still valid. And lastly, we believe that we are able to generate profits by implementing the restructuring plan. We will provide you with all these supporting documents during your next visit to the office. Okay, now I can move on to the next issue. So, the auditor is concerned about the 378 million of deferred tax asset recognized in the current year.
I need my IAS book. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay, now what page? Here! Yes, I found it.
IAS 12 income tax states that a deferred tax asset is recognized for an unused tax loss carry forward or unused tax credit if and only if it is considered probable that there will be sufficient future taxable profit against which the loss or credit carry forward can be utilized. I remember talking to our tax agent about this matter and the tax treatment. We continuously believe that we will be able to obtain sufficient taxable profits in the future to offset the deferred tax asset recognized in the current year. We have consulted with our tax agent to revise our current and future tax strategies. We will provide you with the 2017 forecasted financial statements, including forecasted cash flows that was prepared, taking into consideration that the restructuring plan will be executed well.
I think this is enough evidence. I think I'm getting a headache. Too much. No. I need more. I need to focus.
Okay, next issue is about the auditor's doubts over the reported balance of PPE and impairment costs as well as revaluation reserves. For this, I think I need to read back on the standards. What IAS is it? IAS 36, Impairment of Assets. According to the standards, an impairment loss is recognized whenever recoverable amount is below the carrying amount. If there is an indication that an asset may be impaired, then the asset's recoverable amount must be calculated. So basically, there are 2 indicators of impairment, which is internal and external. The internal indicators related to BesiCo are negative changes in market and economy, whereas the external indicator is when assets are idle, part of a restructuring, or held for disposal. This is exactly the condition that BesiCo is in right now. Oh, I remember that we also did engage with Ms. Meros to value our assets and to determine the economic value of assets.
We have engaged with an independent asset valuer to determine the economic value of assets. We also believe that the impairment of assets were necessary because some assets became idle due to temporary cessation of Giant Steel's operations. We will provide you with extra supporting evidence, which are workings of PPE and the independent valuer's report, which reflects the reported amount shown in the financial statements.
So let's move on to the next issue, which is regarding the inventory being recognized at cost. IAS 2 inventories specifically states that inventories are required to be stated at the lower of cost and net realizable value, which is NRV. So any write-down to NRV should be recognized as an expense in the period in which the write-down occurs. We also have engaged with an independent asset valuer to determine the net realizable value of inventories. We found out that the NRV is higher than the cost. Therefore, we recorded the inventories at cost since it is lower than NRV. We will attach the independent valuer's report for your review. For more evidence, we are willing to provide you access to our SAP inventory management system on your next visit. Okay, finally, the last question from the auditor. So, they are concerned on whether a provision for a onerous contract should be made due to a breach in the offtake agreement between Giant Steel and Besi DRI. A onerous contract is a contract in which the unavoidable cost of meeting the obligations under the contract exceed the economic benefits expected to be received under it. The unavoidable cost is the lower of the cost of fulfilling orders or any compensation or penalties arising from failure to fulfill orders. So, in BesiCo's report, we have calculated the expected economic benefit, which is the sales of products to Besi DRI. Meanwhile, the unavoidable cost is cost of producing orders because it is lower. So, it is not a onerous contract since unavoidable cost is less than expected economic benefit. So, no provision. We have ascertained the expected economic benefit, sales from products, and unavoidable cost of fulfilling the order of the contract, and found out that the expected economic benefit exceeded the unavoidable cost. Therefore, we concluded that it is not a onerous contract and no provisions needs to be made. For more evidence, we will provide you with a copy of the offtake agreement and the calculations made workings. Please do not hesitate to contact us if you need further clarification. Thank you very much. Regards, BesiCo Accounts Department.
Yes! I'm done answering all audit queries. I can go home and enjoy my beauty sleep. What happened, boss?
There is running outside. It is our ex-employee. Please help me get rid of them. Come, get into my room.
Boss?
You terminate them all. Why, boss? Are you sure you want to terminate them because of the riot? Yes, I'm afraid we don't have any money to pay them. Actually, our company not doing very good. I'm afraid we need to retrench more people. Unless we have better plan. You think?
Considering our company's performance now, terminating employees from divisions that are not making profit and maintain Giant Steel would be the best solution. The courts also will not intervene in the company's decision, but the court will need to intervene if it is shown that the employee's decision was not genuine or not following the code of conduct for industrial harmony.
I think that's a good idea. We can focus more on Giant Steel. Can you tell me other laws that are protecting the employee?
Oh, there are many of them, such as Employee Act, Industrial Relation Act, Employee Social Security Act, and Minimum Retirement Age Act.
That was a lot. I think we should take this matter very serious. How about the principle and guideline to retrench the employee?
Yes, boss. Retrenchment is a very serious issue. I will explain to you the principle and guideline. But don't doze off. First of all, you need to know there are two types of retrenchment, direct dismissal and constructive dismissal. But I will only focus on direct dismissal because they used to be our family. Let's properly dismiss them. The first step is we must set out a proper documentation stating the criteria for the selection employee to be retrenched. Commonly applied principle is last in and first out. Means the most junior employee would be retrenched first. But boss, since our company has many foreigner workers, we must terminate them first, according to Section 60N of the Employment Act 1955. There are also other ways that we can impose to reduce our workforce. Some of them are introduce voluntary retirement benefit scheme and promise to provide recommendation letter for their future engagement. To select criteria, we need to take into consideration the employee's family situation, ability, and other factors to make sure the retrenchment will not give a huge impact that will affect their lives terribly. After selecting which employee to be terminated, we need to give affected employees a notice of retrenchment. The length of the notice depends on the terms of employment contract. For those who constitute as employees under Section 2 of the Employee Act, the length of the notice depends on their length of employment. We need to follow the notice of issuance length very seriously so that they have enough time to apply for a new job and to build up their motivation again. Next, we need to report to the relevant authorities. Under the Employment Retrenchment Notification 2004, employees are required to complete an Employment Notification Retrenchment Form, or also known as Borang PK, consisting of different parts which must be launched to the nearest labour office at different stages of the retrenchment exercise. Borang PK requires employers to provide information including the reasons for the retrenchment. Failure to report is an offence under Section 99A of the Employment Act and is punishable with a fine of 10,000 ringgit for each offence. The reporting need to be made to make sure that we follow the retrenchment rule so that the employee will not feel discriminated. And lastly, retrenchment benefits. Where employees that are not part of Employment Act, the retrenchment benefit depends on the terms of the employment contract. If there is no employment contract, the discretion to pay termination benefits lies in the hands of the employer. But don't you think we need to provide them some benefits to show our appreciation for their services, boss? At least it can help them in between job transition.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Although it is hard to let them go, but we need to do something so that the company can continue operation. We can get the fund to pay the compensation from liquidation process if companies agree to liquidate the non-making profit decisions. Right, boss? Boss? Boss?
Boss, you are not listening. Ya, lagi mikir. Tes. Kerane. Halo. Kerane. Mana semua nih? Kerak. Nih. Kerane. Dan semuanya. Get into the meeting room.
Oh, before we start the meeting, yesterday you asked me to do the financial statement analysis. Let's see.
Boss, I'm going to share you the results of our financial statement analysis. First, for the financial performance, we can see here that our company's revenue had a major incline by 0.66% compared to 2015. We also had many other items in our income statement decrease significantly that resulted to another series of loss of our company. In 2016, our net loss for the financial year increases by 0.15%. Next, for the financial position, I will explain on the movement of some key items in the statement of financial position. First, significant decrease of inventories by 0.55% is related to the written down inventory in SOPL. Next, decreases of trade and other receivable is because there is no new order since January 2016. For tax recoverable, it increases by 24.94% due to company losses. Moreover, cash and bank amount reduces by 0.37% because of the slow sales by the company. For the equity and liabilities part in SOFP, there is no additional share were purchased or sold. and increases in reserve is due from the accumulated loss since 2008. Next, the increases of amount of loan and debts is because company borrow them to cover business expenditure. Lastly, the payables increases by 0.21% are the results of credit purchase of rises price of raw material. In financial ratio analysis, we have 4 general ratio: liquidity ratio, efficiency ratio, leverage ratios, and profitability ratio. Let's look for the ratio under liquidity. Current ratio is the measure the ability to pay bills in the short term. Shows that BesiCo have trouble to pay short-term obligation since the current liabilities could not be liquidated to pay for current asset. Asset test ratio of BesiCo is less than 1, shows that we do not have enough liquid asset to pay our current liabilities. Our current assets are highly dependent on inventory. Cash ratio results shows insufficient cash on hand exists for BesiCo to pay off short-term debt. In conclusion, the liquidity or ability of a company to remain in business is low. Next, for efficiency, inventory turnover ratio for the year 2015, BesiCo inventory took 5 turns of 61 days to turn our inventory into sales, while we took 5 or 73 days to turn the inventory into sales in 2016. This low turnover shows BesiCo have weak sales and possibly excess inventory. For total asset turnover, in 2016, BesiCo is less efficient in utilizing our asset as compared to 2015. Leverage ratio resulted in debt to equity ratio where it shows shareholder equity unable to cover the debt in the event of business fall. In addition, for debt to asset ratio, it resulted that BesiCo has more liabilities than asset. A ratio greater than 1 shows a considerable portion of the asset is funded by debt. In profitability ratio, we look in 3 views. First, profit margin ratio, which result on every 1 ringgit of sales, the loss incurred is 79 cents in 2016 and 32 cents in 2015. In a final term, we incurred more loss for every 1 ringgit of sale in current year. Next, return on asset shows management of BesiCo are utilizing the economic resources better in 2015, but in 2016, it became more unproductive and inefficient. Last but not least, return on equity. Every 1 ringgit of shareholders' equity, BesiCo has incurred a loss of 34 cents in 2016 and 62 cents in 2015. Management of BesiCo is making poor decisions or investing capital in unproductive asset and doesn't know how to reinvest the earning wisely so as to increase productivity and profits.
Boss?
Boss, wake up! Wake up, boss! Boss!
Who are you? What are you doing here?
Oh yes, I am Ali. Yeah, this is my partner, Saida. We are from Jimmy & Co.
Jimmy who?
They are from consulting firm, boss.
Boss, you remember you said you needed a regularization plan? They are here to present to you.
Okay, speak.
Sure. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, this is our proposal for the restructuring plan. First thing first, we need to analyze BesiCo as a whole, which is by the SWOT analysis. The obvious strength is that BesiCo is very well known in steel industry with diversified portfolio. They engage in 3 business divisions, which is steel, property, and furniture. BesiCo managed to sustain for a long period successfully. On the other hand, there are things that have caused the decline in BesiCo's overall performance. BesiCo have a lot of subsidiaries and you may not realize that the businesses' activities are redundant with each other. In addition to that, from the research report, it was stated that most of the division incurred losses consecutively. This has led to a bad financial condition to the extent that BesiCo was classified as PN17 status company. One of the reasons is due to complex management hierarchy. Moving on to the opportunities, BesiCo was lucky to have been proposed by the Chinese investor where they offered capital aids and expertise to restructure BesiCo. Next is the reduce of world supply of steel have caused the price to increase. This is a golden opportunity for BesiCo as government of China have planned to reduce its steel production capacity due to new duties imposed towards them. Lastly, the trades. Internally, BesiCo itself have caused self-trade. Its decision to refuse changes have caused the plants to be ill-equipped, too conservative, and production process is not modernized. These have caused a low product quality produced, reduced in sales, and negatively affect the financial position, which made BesiCo not appeal to investors. Lastly, competition with others. Every steelmaker will take the opportunity of current situation of China to enter the global market. So now, we will be focusing to improve these three areas, which are organization, debt, and cost restructure. Let's see the first one, which is organization restructure. Here, we can see a complex management hierarchy. The first issue is when Mr. Charles holds two positions in BesiCo, which are the chairman and managing director. This is contradicting to MCCG Practice 1.3, where it was stated that the positions of chairman and CEO, or also known as managing director in other countries, are held by different individuals. Chairman is the leader of the board, while MD is the leader of the management. The logic was the leader of the board should not be the leader of the management. To provide a better balanced structure of supervision and management, we would suggest Charles to remain as chairman and appoint a new MD who will be responsible for the daily operations of the company, organization, or corporate division. BesiCo need a new MD who is more relevant with the current trend in steel industry. Fresh idea, fresh move to ensure BesiCo to remain relevant in this industry. The next issue is Alfred, the nephew, who was appointed as the executive director. This will raise in ethical issues for both Charles and Alfred. Since Charles is the major shareholder of BesiCo, the appointment might be biased where Alfred might not possess a relevant qualification for the post. Charles might have conflict of interest if and only if he found out Alfred was acting not in his good manner. Charles indirectly have stabbed the trust of other shareholders. On the other hand, Alfred will have difficulties in the decision making where his decision might be influenced by Charles. The company will turn upside down if the decision is not favorable for the company. In order to avoid this, Alfred needs to make sure that he is independent in his mind when making decisions for the best of the company and not for his personal interests. Now let's move on to the second area, which is debt restructure. Restraints order granted by the court will bind BesiCo with all the creditors and members, restricting various forms of recovery and enforcement actions against the company. This situation should be fully utilized by BesiCo as it will only be extended up to 9 months. What's good about RO is it is not the same as judicial management. There is no provision that prohibits directors from continuing the operation or to create further debt, which means it is the right time for the Chinese investor to save BesiCo. BesiCo should also start to compete for tenders to slowly make comeback in steel industry due to uptrend in steel demand. BesiCo can go for large domestic infrastructure such as MRT, LRT line, high-rise building and private construction project. Now let's hear something from my partner Saida.
Hi Mr. Charles, my name is Saida. Okay, let me further explain about the next plan, which is cost restructure. This is where we need to review the corporate structure to highlight the overspend. I have 4 suggestions for cost restructure, and there are divestment of property and furniture division to release asset, restructuring subsidiaries to remove unnecessary costs, restructure the process for division steel, and also reducing number of employees. Okay, firstly is divestment of property and furniture division. For property division, it was a profitable segment from 2014 to 2016, but it records lower sales revenue and operating revenue due to tight measure from Bank Negara. While furniture division is struggling to break even with a small contribution of only 27 million. I can see that the steel division has a lot more potential to sustain and make profit. So the idea is to divest, which is to liquidate the property and furniture division as they are the division that is unprofitable. The money from the liquidation can be used to fund the payment for employee retrenchment compensation. Next, I would suggest you to restructure your subsidiaries to remove unnecessary costs. I can see that you have redundant companies in the steel division. Besides, I believe that having more subs will only make your management costs and operation costs increase. So let's just focus on Giant Steel and liquidate the rest of your sub. Let's take a look at Giant Steel SWOT analysis. Giant Steel's strength are Giant Steel is the major producer of HRC and own a 500-acre mills. Giant Steel is also well protected by the government. The weaknesses that Giant Steel has is that Giant Steel has inefficient production, which is ill-equipped and thus unable to meet the market demand. Besides, Giant Steel also facing a financial woes. On the brighter side, the opportunities that Giant Steel has are the uptrend of steel demand. This is due to large domestic infrastructure projects like MRT2, LRT Line 3, TRX buildings, and private construction projects. I was also informed that the Chinese investors are interested to inject capital to revamp Giant Steel. And the last opportunity is that China has reduced their supply and exports of steel. Lastly, if you look at the threats of Giant Steel, it is the rising raw material cost and high price of natural gas. Besides, there are still China steelmakers dumping activities and also competition with the local steelmakers. Next, I would suggest you to restructure the process for Giant Steel. It is important to use quality raw material to ensure the best quality of your product. I would also suggest you to use modern equipment. Modern equipment will make the production run smoothly and efficient. On the other side, I would like to stress that all waste from your mills should be properly managed. Solid waste generated by integrated iron and steel works cause environmental pollution and therefore must be discarded. Also, the waste generated by steel industry not only causes health problems but also causes a lot of environmental degradation. So my suggested solution for the waste management is solid waste generated from BesiCo should be recycled and reused. You should store solid waste on a temporary basis, and then for further reuse, the solid waste shall be transported to the sinter plant. And lastly, you should sign a joint venture agreement for the environmentally beneficial handling and processing of steelmaking byproducts with respective company that serve that services. On top of that, I would like to also stress about your employee safety during their engagement with your company. This is a few safety measures that you need to highlight, such as when moving machinery, falling from height, falling objects, on-site traffics, and process safety incidents. The importance of having safety measure is to prevent work-related injuries and incidents, and also to promote the implementation and integration of consistent safety management system with a view to improve working conditions in your company. Okay, now we go to the last point, which is to reduce the number of employees. As I mentioned before, as the other division and subs under steel division is divested or decided to be liquidated, we will have less employee, which will cause our management and operation costs shrink. On the other side, the employee that is remain under Giant Steel should properly allocated and ensure there is no surplus position and jobs. And it is important for you to properly lay off your employees for company's good reputation. Okay, so I will now share on the allocation of budget for the regularization plan. We estimate the total fund needed from the investor is Rm 5 billion, which is 40% of 5 billions will be used to improve Giant Steel production and process. 25% will be kept as cash and cash equivalent, while the rest 35% of 5 billions will be used to settle off BesiCo's liabilities. So, what do you guys think?
Everyone! We can do this!
1, 2.